So first, we need to ask, where do we stand as humankind with regards to the climate crisis? And we have all seen the headlines, and many of you will have experiences from their own countries. And yes, it's pretty bad. Yet we have seen things like the Atlantic current about to collapse, possibly a tipping point, dying coral reefs. We have seen warming oceans, thawing permafrost, extreme weather events costing billions. And at the same time, world carbon emissions have reached a record high, unfortunately. But of course, we can still do something for a better tomorrow, and some do. Even right now, by far not enough, and not fast enough. So this is the sort of situation that we all know from the past few days, and it all adds up to one big picture. Really, as COP30 stands, we have to say, and we can say, that we are at a crossroads. Will we be able to reach a state of stabilized Earth? Here you see the Earth globe in the middle, in a stabilized place. Or do we go down into hothouse Earth, where we're heading right now with possible 2.8 degrees warming, but hopefully we can still change that. And IPRA, the International Public Relations Association, is as a leading global network for PR professionals in their personal capacity. We aim to advance trusted communication and ethical practice of public relations. And because we have consultative status with the United Nations, we do feel a responsibility, of course, to contribute to achieving the UN sustainability goals and SDG 13 climate action, of course, in particular. For that, we have a climate change chapter where we discuss communications, and you will find a climate communications guideline to support good practice on our website. We introduced climate change and ESG categories for our global IPRA Golden World Award system. And of course, we achieve to showcase great communications and discuss aspects of climate change topic webinars like we do today. And we conduct surveys to help understand the topic and to support the global profession. All of these bits you can always find on our website, and I will start off here with a little glimpse into a survey which we should just do, just to give us a bit of a background where we stand with climate change and communications as of today. So our sample consists of PR practitioners worldwide. The majority is quite experienced and in-house, as you can see here. And the most important bit is that we found that despite the recent discussions about sustainability in the world and political stage, where people actually work, like in the companies, in the agencies, everywhere, we do notice that the topic has become more important over the past 2 years. And when we asked practitioners to look towards the next 2 to 3 years, they said the topic is even becoming still more important as it is now. So it is key to look at this area. And what we have, of course, people in our profession, we are convinced, as you can see here, that we do have a responsibility to address the climate change. And one part of the reason is stakeholders expect companies and organizations to communicate. So there's a need to speak, a need to communicate. However, what you can also see here is people feel there's not enough resources and not enough training for climate communication. And misinformation is a huge challenge in our area, which is one of the reasons why we speak together here today. All this is part of a big range of challenges that we feel we face, from the training, which I just said already, to measuring impacts, overcoming misinformation, and how to really deal with all of this. But of course, we as a profession, we also see loads of opportunities. As you can see here, we have the possibilities, and your peers in our survey agree, that we can help raise public awareness and understanding. We can be driving forces for positive behavioral change, and we can influence policy and regulatory decisions. But to be able to do that, we need to understand the matter. And this is where Eduardo comes in. He's a globally active communicator coming from Brazil, so he really can speak not just from his heart, but also from his home. And he worked in companies for a long time that connect Brazil with Europe, and right now he is in Europe. And he will now give us an inside view of COP30, what makes it different, and what communicators need to know about this year's edition of the world's probably most important climate conference. So, and with that, Eduardo, over to you.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you, IPRA, also for this opportunity. The work that you guys have been done towards climate communication is really unique. So thank you for letting me being part of this. And thanks for the introduction, Daniel. Let me share my screen here. Do you guys see my screen now?
Yep.
Yep, good. Guys, first of all, I'm sorry, I'm battling a little bit of a cold here, so I'll try to make the session as smooth as possible, but pardon me if I have to cough. I'll just mute myself here, okay? I'm in the Netherlands now, but I'm coming from a really long trip to Abu Dhabi. I was in a event there, so 4 days of a big event, shaking hands a lot. I think like after COVID, our body is not that strong anymore to hold this level of change, right? So, but so far so good. Guys, before we jump in COP30, which starts today, I would like to introduce myself really quick. I am Eduardo. As Daniel said, I'm from Brazil. I'm based in the Netherlands since 5 years ago. I am 15 years in PR and communications, and from these 15 years, 7 years I was leading Europe and Asia's PR for the Brazil's largest petrochemical, and of course dealing with a lot of topics regarding Brazil and Europe and regulations in terms of like recyclability, life cycle analysis, carbon neutrality. I also have an experience in the EU advocacy in bio-based plastic, ethanol responsible sourcing, and plant-based fuels. I was involved in the ESG discussions in Brazil on circularity and carbon neutrality. This was when I was at Braskem, this petrochemical. Right now, since January, I moved to a maritime company. So I'm based in Rotterdam, working for the maritime industry, but still involved in electric pusher, electric vessels, and carbon neutrality in maritime projects. My personal passions are vinyl records, especially for Brazilian popular music. So if any one of you guys like it, we have something to talk about. And also cats. I have two cats. Their names are Amado and Irene. They're here also watching this session together with you guys. So this is a little bit about me. And before we talk about COP30, which starts today, I would like to set in the scene a little bit and talk about the evolution of the past four COPs, just for us to be able to see what happened from 5 years now, not just in the COPs, but the way that the world look at the COPs, right? So we start with the COP26 in Glasgow in 2021. It was like the post-pandemic COP. It was the first major checkpoint since the Paris Agreement, a really important COP because of the momentum after COVID. We had like 2 years focused on the COVID, of course, biggest priority of the time. So the climate change was not in the first place, but then during COP26, everything was back. So it was a really important checkpoint. And also it was an historic moment because it was the first COP to include the language phasing down coal and ending fossil fuels subsides. So we could see that COP was reinventing itself a little bit, but also the way that people looked at COP. So I remember we had lots of criticism and we had a really important protest. Greta Thunberg was protesting against COP, saying no more blah, blah, blah. So the whole world was watching at COP, but also criticizing the pace of the change, right? And then 1 year later, COP27 was held in Egypt, Sharm el Sheikh. I was at this COP and I remember that everyone was calling it the COP of realization. Because after all the protests that we had against COP26, we had COP27, this urgency in the air, right? So everyone, the governments, but also the private sector was movimenting to present solutions and no more promises, no more what I'm going to achieve in 2050, what I'm going to achieve in 2030. No, At the moment, the world was seeking for solutions and things that were ready right now. Also, it was like a call for countries to revisit the strengths their 2030 emission targets to align with the 1.5 Celsius target ambition. So it was a really important COP. And again, lots of criticism, lots of protesting. Remember, we had like a really big protest at a private airport where people were protesting against the private jets that were going to Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. So the message was, okay, so the whole world is charging us people to reduce our emissions, but the leaders and the big people are still burning fuel in their jets to come here. So it was a little bit of like a hypocrisy. And this protest resonated a lot at the time. 1 year after, we had COP28 in Dubai. So the energy mayors were finally at the table. It was a really important COP because it was in Dubai. So I think it shaped the tone of the message a lot because it's the hub of oil in the world, right? So finally, the energy mayor were at the table. Oil and gas producing nation, including those in the Gulf, were deeply involved in negotiation, reflecting a shift. They're no longer outside of the table, but they were part of the transition discussion. It was really important in terms of maturity for the topic, but it was also heavily criticized by the journalists and the society as a stakeholder. So everyone was questioning the lobby that was being done by like the oil major in Dubai. And then finally, last year, we had COP29 in, one second. Yeah, here, perfect. We had COP29 in Azerbaijan, in Baku, which was the COP of finance, right? So it was also a really important COP because defined really important rules for global carbon trading system that we all know that it's becoming a really important market right now. And also countries agreed on the new climate finance. So $1.3 trillion per year by 2035 for climate action worldwide. And also rich countries must lead with at least 300 billion per year dollars going to support developing nations. So COP of finance, lots of numbers and finance people on the table. And again, again, lots of criticism. So everyone was criticizing the numbers that was released, saying that it was like an offense. So basically, I'm bringing here this story to show to you that as much as we feel climate change in our skin, in our daily life, COP is no longer just about negotiation or diplomacy. As climate change becomes part of our daily routine, all the stakeholders want to be at the table. So more companies are stepping in. COP is organized in green zone where the negotiators and the countries are, but we also have like the blue zone where the private sector is, companies, association, the society organized. So COP is gaining traction and lots of attention in the same pace that climate change is becoming more urgent, but also it's becoming more dialogue place. So as we see people interesting more on the topic, we see that from 5 years now, COP is leaving the traditional approach of being just about the diplomacy and it's becoming more about dialogue. It's not just about negotiation, but about shared narratives. So everyone wants to have their story told, their ideas heard, listened. And also instead of just closed rooms, we see now more global voices, everyone taking part of it. Instead of policy tables, we see public platforms. And instead of elite diplomacy, we see now a collective action. So if you see this history since Glasgow to now, and not just the results of the COPs itself, of the negotiation, but the way that it reflects on society, we see that COP nowadays, it's a stage for the world. So you see, guys, that since last week, but especially from today until next week, all eyes will be in Brazil, in Belém, in Amazonia, talking about climate, because this is a matter that it's regards to everyone, matters to everyone, but also because the event itself, it's gaining a biggest traction, right? So we talk about Glasgow, Egypt, Dubai, and Azerbaijan, and now we arrive in Brazil. COP30 is starting today in Belém, the capital of Pará, the state of Pará, which is in the heart of the Amazon forest. And why COP30 in Brazil will be so different? what can we expect for this COP? Why do we think that it's going to be historic? I can define it because it's the right discussion at the right time and in the right place, right? So COP30 in Brazil represents a convergence of factors that will make it unique. And I will present it for you guys in three different pillars, okay? Pillar number one is geopolitics. All my PR colleagues here, I assume everyone is super informed about everything that is happening in the world. So I'm not going to tell everything that is happening, but we can see that a lot is happening in terms of like conflicts, economic shock, political polarization. So it all settled the scene for COP happening today. Also, the leadership, the pillar number two, leadership and social resonance. Brazil has today a president that brings a lot of moral authority to talk a lot about some important subjects that I will stress here with you guys and show why his voice is so important in this context. And of course, the third pillar is symbolism and location. COP is being held in the Amazon forest, comparing with like years ago in Dubai or Azerbaijan. Now we are like in the most important ecosystem in the world. Everyone knows about Amazon. Everyone knows about its importance. So it will kind of like turns the conference venue into a real reminder on what's at risk, right? So let's start for the first pillar, which is geopolitics, right? So 5 years, countless variables, and today's reality is the sum of all of it. When we talk about geopolitics, guys, I could have like 30 slides talking about everything that is happening in the world, but I bring here three important factors that will arrive in something interesting for us to analyze. First one is the Russia and Ukraine war. We have like back the fear in Europe borders and security models being questioned. We also had like an energy shock. So this is a war that everyone, but especially people in Europe, we felt it in our pockets. So Europe pivots away from Russia oil and gas. Global prices surge, impacting household budgets worldwide. So we could see that our energy models were being questioned and we were all paying for it. So it was something really important for us to take into consideration. And of course, the humanitarian fallout. So millions of refugees, food insecurity. So it was something that, of course, shaped a little bit of the conversation. The second pillar is the Israel-Palestine war. We could see the society mobilized, so protests, boycotts, workplace tensions, and the urgent calls for corporate accountability. It was also like the first real-time social media war, so narratives formed and spread instantly across the globe in real time. And guys, for me, the Israel-Palestine war has kind of like, in a painful way, sharpened the word's sense of humanity. So in an age where we are more connected, technology advanced and informed more than ever, the contrast between progress and extreme violence became impossible to ignore it, right? So the shocking images that we could see every day forced people everywhere to look more critically about human rights, human dignity, and the value of every life. And then it was like impossible to talk about develop if the humanity was left behind. So it in a way sharpened word sense of humanity. And the third point that I would like to bring here is, of course, Donald Trump. He is an openly against ESG person. Policy reversion, including the Paris Agreement withdrawal in his last mandate, but also the drill baby drill policy in the US. We could feel it in the investments impact. So we could see significant effects on the ESG investments. Also, Donald Trump does something that is really interesting for us PR professionals to analyze, which is bringing climate change as an object for polarization, bringing climate change as an object to define sides and not facing it as a reality, as something that is happening. So polarization risk, of course, sustainability narrative face unprecedented division along political lines, right? This is a little bit about geopolitics. And then I decided to highlight here in all the topics that I brought, some topics, which is the majority of them, that is related to people. So, of course, you know, climate change is happening, but a lot is happening with people, right? So all the conflicts in the world and everything that is happening, it's about people. And of course, on our background, we have important things happening in terms of climate change. Daniel showed a little bit of these in the beginning, but I prepared 5 examples that happened in the 5 years. So shocking news for us: the bleaching of the corals worldwide, the El Nino event that is becoming stronger and stronger, the US, the average number of climate weather disasters costing over 1 billion each has increased. So people could feel more in their also pockets the price of climate change. The marine heat wave category map, so we could see that the waters are becoming warmer and warmer. And another example, it's the floodings that happened in Pakistan last year. That was really a big disaster. So what I'm showing for you guys here in this slide is climate change is happening. We're facing a really challenge in terms of climate change and natural disaster. But on top of that, people are also struggling with wars and politics and everything, right? So is it okay for you guys? Because there's some renovation here close to me, but is it the sound okay for you guys?
Very well, no problem.
Okay, good, 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 good. So what I'm saying is like the past geopolitical events happening, like wars, pandemic, Donald Trump, are heavily connected with the S from ESG, right? So it's about people and social responsibility. So here we can see like a new imperative emerging. The geopolitical shocks of the 5 years events have made it clear. A human and social lens is no longer optional. Tackling climate change alone, it's not enough. We as PR professional have to roll and advance the climate justice. So something that we will see a lot in this COP30, it's not just climate change, but climate justice, the concept of climate justice, right? And then we go for the second pillar that connects with this a lot, which is leadership and resonance. Lula. Lula is the president of Brazil. Here, I decided to bring for you guys an important and iconic picture of Lula. He has like populist roots, fighting against hunger and social inclusion, focus on policies for people, food access, mobility, dignity. Lula is also positioned as a counterbalance to Trump policy in the global ESG narrative, and he is the ambassador for social justice. In this next slide, guys, I brought 2 speeches that Lula gave in the past 3 years. So the first one is the one in 2023 in the Summit for a New Global Financial Pact in Paris. These is the words that Lula said for all the presidents and leaders present. It's not possible that in a meeting with so many presidents of important countries, the word inequality does not appear. We're in an increasingly unequal world. We need to treat this with as much priority as the climate issue, because otherwise we might end up in a planet with a very good climate and people continue to die of hunger. Again, this year in the United Nations General Assembly, 2 months ago, I think, he said, developing nations face climate change while grappling with other challenges. Meanwhile, rich countries enjoy a standard of living reached at the expense of 200 years of greenhouse gas emissions. Demanding greater ambition and greater access to resources and technologies is not a matter of charity, but justice. So, the second pillar here, President Lula and the leadership, connects a lot with geopolitics because we see that people are struggling and struggling. Of course, the most vulnerable ones, especially in the global south, struggling even more. And Lula is a really important and powerful voice of it, right? So when we listen to these powerful words, we of course drive our attention to the places where people are more vulnerable. And we can here bring the concept of the global south, right? Not sure if everyone is familiar with the term, but the global south is a term used to describe the developing and emerging regions in the world. And Lula is the ambassador of the global south. So something that we need to keep our eyes on. First, Lula's leadership, as I told you, he is the one talking about climate justice, not just climate change. And he is the one bringing the importance of the global south voices. And another important things for us to keep our eyes on, the BRICS expansion. The alliance now includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Iran, representing 45% of the global population. So it's a really powerful group. And of course, it's reshaping the power, right? So BRICS nations are challenging Western dominance in energy markets, trade agreement, ESG standards, creating alternative frameworks for global cooperation. And on top of all of that, it's important for us to see that the political tension is there because Trump is also openly against the BRICS. All the taxes imposed against Brazil, India, China in the beginning of the year, and still happening, but because the European was kind of like absorbed the taxes, but the taxes are still happening against Brazil, against India, against China. It also brings a lot of tension, like the US against the BRICS, and it's also bringing the BRICS voice louder for the whole world to listen, right? So, okay, for us, PR professionals, what the Global South has to say to us. For this, I brought this image here, which is really iconic. This illustration is from Joaquin Torres Garcia. In the year was 1943, and the name of it is the America Invertida, the inverted America. For us in the South America, Latin America, this is a really common illustration. And it questions a lot the North-South power structure, right? So by placing South America on top, the artist challenges the idea of the Northern Hemisphere is above or more important. Of course, it's a critique of cultural colonization. He says like the map is like a manifesto. We're not upside down. The world map is drawn with a bias. So with this criticism about the global south and all the politics that are being made for the north, and sometimes we see a kind of like a blind spot in the global south, for us PR communicators, some important things that we have to take in consideration. Listen first. The global south narrative aren't peripheral. We're not just talking about poverty, about people struggling. Yes, it's happening, but it's beyond it. They represent emerging markets, demographic power, and resources control that will define the next decade. So for this, we need to adapt messaging. So sustainability story must acknowledge this split word. One size fits all Western ESG framework, it's not enough. And it's being heavily criticized and facing resistance, and they require localized approaches, right? So the bottom line for the communicators, in a fractured global landscape, effective PR means understanding the global south demands are settling agendas. Ignoring those voices means missing this story, okay? So I'm sure you guys here, maybe the majority of you guys have teams in the global south, in Brazil, in Africa, in India, in the Middle East, in the Southeast Asia. Guys, it's now time to listen their voices. Okay, it's now time to give more attention to this, because listen to the global south means that you are understanding the concept of the global justice more in a more complete way, and means that you are having richer and more deeper narratives than just climate change. Okay, I will stress a little bit more this point, but now we're going to the symbolism of the location of the Amazon forest, which is the pillar number 3 that makes this COP so special. Of course, it has like a symbolic power. It's a narrative shift comparing to the past COPs being held in Dubai, for example, but there's also a hidden tension. So the hidden rare earth minerals in the rainforest expose a major tension, protects the forest versus the interest of extracting its resources. So for many of you guys that works like in tech companies, the rare earth minerals is something that we need to take care of it and look at this. And of course, we understand that the Amazon forest, it's a megaphone for this message. So the fact that this conference is happening in the heart of the forest, it's, you guys can expect something bigger coming from this, okay? But now that I talked about the geopolitics and the concept of the climate justice and the global south, I would like to zoom in and give you my perspective from the Netherlands for European PR narratives, right? So I'm based here in the Netherlands for 5 years. We all know that the Netherlands, Belgium, and Germany are kind of like the hub of sustainability in the world. there's a lot happening here. We are in a super advanced stage of circular economy. So here in Rotterdam, for example, of course, if you buy a PET bottle, you take it back to the market. So it's generating an economy in circular economy. I'm really sure that everyone here that works in the Netherlands or in Belgium or in Germany, but also in general, in Europe in general, we know that we have really well-constructed message house. So we have clear objectives towards emissions, towards recyclability, towards life cycle analysis. We are educated about greenwashing and how to claim or green claims. We also have understood that the audience here in terms of society is super critical. We had like the Shell case to prove it for us. So my view as a Brazilian person working with PR here in the Netherlands and in Europe is, I think we are really well prepared as a PR professionals to talk about environmental, but the COP30 brings one question for us. Are we ready for the S and the ESG? Aren't we just focused on the E agenda, on the emissions, on the carbon neutrality, on the circular economy? But when it comes about climate justice, are we ready? In our PR or message houses, are we addressing the global south? Are we addressing global climate justice? Here, I'm giving you a quick example, and I'm bringing two images for you guys. The first one is an activity which is super common here in the Netherlands, which is plastic fishing. Plastic fishing is a super common activity that companies promote here in the Netherlands. Basically, they bring their teams in a Saturday or maybe in a weekday for boats to navigate the Amsterdam, Rotterdam canals and picking plastic from the canals. This is a super nice activity, guys. I'm not saying that it's wrong to do. It's a really nice activity, not just because of the picking up plastic itself, but also the Plastic Whale, the company that promote this activity. They have a really powerful awareness message of sustainability. So not saying that that's wrong, but at the same time, I'm bringing here this image of like a waste picker, a Brazilian waste picker, picking up trash from the waste, right? So some dates, some data here. Around 800,000 people work as waste pickers in Brazil today. You guys can imagine that they do not work as comfortable as we are here in the AC in the office. So the condition for this work is really critical. They're responsible for about 90% of all recycling dry waste in the country. Every year, about 8 billion reais, which is $1.7 billion worth for recyclable material, still ends up in landfills instead of being collected and reused. This means that it's a huge economic value being wasted still when we have 800,000 people working on this. What I'm trying to say here, guys, is I'm not saying that it's wrong doing activities as plastic fishing, but strong narratives must acknowledge both environmental crisis and the human system that addresses it. So every time that we're talking about like recyclability, if you guys are working in global corporation that has teams in Brazil, in India, in global south, are you guys understanding the other layers that the waste has? So cultural awareness transforms our messaging in from simplistic to sophisticated. Here I'm bringing these two images to show you guys in each and every environmental narrative that we bring in our PRs, there are human narratives behind it, and we need to address them. Okay. The sound is still good. The renovation is super loud here for me. Are you guys okay? Yep. Good. So we go now for the key takeaways from this presentation and what can we as PR professional expect from COP30. Takeaway number one, guys, let's look beyond the Europe-US bubble. One narrative is not enough for the whole world. Key points. The company must to communicate sustainability from a global point of view. So if you operate in the global south, Brazil, Africa, Southeast Asia, Middle East, you must to integrate with local reality. Talk to your team, listen to them, Let's do activity crossing information from their teams to not have like a simplistic view of the problem, right? Do not assume that what resonates in Amsterdam or Brussels works in São Paulo or Lagos, for example. And here, the takeaway number one for me is listen your global teams, right? Takeaway number two, put the S back in the ESG. So from environment to empathy. And in this slide, I decided to bring this picture because it represents a lot, because COP is being held in the middle of the Amazon forest. Everyone is talking about Amazon, 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 but there are people that lives there. And these people are struggling. They are struggling with environmental problems, but also with conflicts and human caused problems. So let's include people in the narratives, okay? ESG communications has overemphasized the E while neglecting the S. So let's expect that the term climate justice will come a lot from this COP. And in this COP30, topics to expect: human rights and labor conditions, migration and inclusion, local community engagement, and corporate responsibility in crisis zones. This will come together with all the environmental problems. So guys, again, I'm not saying that we have to forget about everything that is happening with the climate and just focus on people. No, but we need to develop a more sophisticated narratives, including people, right? So companies will increasingly be challenged on how they are involved in local problems versus their headquarter scenarios. And it tells a lot, again, about the global south, okay? And takeaway number three, be ready for the slingshot effect. So because of everything that is happening, pandemic, conflicts, Donald Trump with the drill, baby drill, politics, we could see that the investments and the ESG and sometimes even the interest from some companies took a pace a little bit of down, slow pace. But guys, political movements could temporarily slow down the sustainability momentum, but ESG is not an ideology. It's a reality, and it's a $1 trillion global industry. So clean tech, electric vehicles, and microchips are now part of an irreversible economic transformation. I'm bringing here some data. Also, for example, the BCG survey says that physical risk of climate change could threaten up to 25% of corporate profits by 2050. So why am I bringing this? Because Donald Trump is saying that ESG is not true, it's against climate change idea. But guys, even though in your company you saw that the investments and the energy towards climate change and then the ESG agenda has slowed down a bit, be ready for this slingshot event, that it will come back for the full capacity, right? And for us as PR professionals, our duty goes beyond storytelling. It's to safeguard truth, anchor our work in facts, and use our voice to champion climate justice. That's just not our job, it's our responsibility. Because we as PR professionals, I really believe that we have an extra layer in our daily job, which is influence, bringing the right thing, and influence leaderships, right? And here we're going to the last slide of my presentation, a really simplistic wrap up. So what COP30 teaches about us in terms of communication is climate and humanity can no longer be addressed separately. This is the next chapter of ESG communication. ESG is evolving, so from climate change to climate justice, and we have to keep this narrative in our PR. Social awareness, so inequality, hunger, migration will define credibility. Simplistic PRs and narratives just about the climate, ignoring the human factor, will be too much simplistic. And global brands must speak locally. So one voice, multiple truths. The reality of here, Amsterdam and Brussels does not fit all. Let's listen to our teams in the global south. And facts, empathy, and inclusion are the new foundations of trust. COP30 is not just about saving the planet, it's about saving our sense of humanity. And it's a story communications must be brave enough to tell. So, guys, thank you very much. This is a little bit of my perceptions of what we can expect from the upcoming days. I hope I could give you guys a little bit of a new perspective of the subject. And we go now, Daniel, for questions and answers, right?
Yes, exactly. I would say a few words, and then I will switch off the recording, and then we have question and answers. So you can feel free to speak your mind and your thinking and everything. Thank you so much, Eduardo. I think the perspective from where COP30 is coming from is really important to know where it's going and what's special about it. And to combine the human factor with the climate topic, I think is really, really crucial, because we can't forget people when we address the climate. In general, of course, the climate change, we know the science, we know what we have to do, we know which people need to move along with us. Saving our good lives now really has become a communications job. And I trust that everyone who's interested here today, we are all keen and interested in doing a tiny little bit. I've given you a few possibilities to continue to connect with us in IPRA. And with a big thank you to you, Eduardo, I'm switching off the recording now, and we can talk and speak about the questions you may have.